Ngojea nini?
Let these characters get out of the village.
Kuna wale wanaenda Israel mwezi huu na mwezi ujao kufanya kazi. Kuna wale nimekubaliana na watu wa Ujerumani, kuna wale nimekubaliana na watu wa Marekani, kuna wale tumekubaliana na watu wa Saudia.
Facilitate at least visas for Kenyans to come to America to work, because we have a lot of work there that needs people that are really able to work.
It's good to stay in the village, but it's also good to go and come back. In fact, the village is very interesting when you have been away and then you come back to the village. But living in the village throughout is not a very interesting thing.
My desire is that if Kenyans can be given a 3-year visa, work visa, to come and work at least for 3 years, instead of staying here where there's no work, or going to places like Saudi Arabia where there's no work, or where they get harassed. We have work in America. Just utilize that opportunity.
Tunataka kuhakikisha ya kwamba hii Kenya kila mtu, vijana wetu wengi wanapata mahali ya kujishikilia, wanapata mahali ya mapato. Kwanza hawa wenye wanaenda nje ndio watatusaidia kuleta madola. The first 10,000 Kenyans will be living to go and work in foreign countries so that they can support themselves and support Kenya, because many countries have established a strategy on how to grow their foreign exchange earnings.
As we go knocking doors abroad, for these opportunities to be opened up to our Kenyan youth, it is imperative, it is critical that we know the kind of skills that obtain in our country. Some of our graduates are not able to meet the requirements of some of the industries that we have. It is critical then that we do an analysis and see where there are gaps, so that we can be able to address these gaps comprehensively together with the educational institutions that we have.
Kenyans who have trained in medicine, nursing, engineering, architecture, agriculture, banking, teaching, transportation, and we also have skilled artisans that can be able to work in the construction sites in the Kingdom of Saudi.
Si tulikubaliana kazi ni kazi? Na bado
we are working towards integrating our system known as the near aims into the Muslim-led system, so that we can work together.
The reason why we want to collect this data is basically to ensure that our young people then gain employment. As I said, not only locally, but also abroad.
All right, we want to just put that into perspective right now with our panelist here. I'm holding court with Dr. Shemo Cholo, who is the chair of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Also, we have Professor Gituro Wanaina with us, who's a lecturer at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. Also, the same way the Professor Exen Iraki, who is a columnist with the Sunday Standard, and also he is a professor at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. Bunyasi Sakwa, apparently, he forgot totally, all right, that he's supposed to be on the show today.
Really? I was thinking I've missed him. I'll
remind him next time.
Right, so that's why he's not really coming this morning. So he sends his apologies as well. Yeah, it happens, this thing sometimes, you know. Waking up in the morning is a task at times. So I really laud you for honoring this. But I want to put that particular story and debate that we had from the soapbox into perspective so far. With the labor migration policy, and people are actually doing various reactions, listening to the PS as well, that the quality of our graduates also is really wanting, and they're not even ready for what is happening in the market. Let's begin with you, Dr. Shemo.
At the BAL, I'm not too sure how accurate that is. I think despite the changes that we've had in the education system for a while, and while by declaring interest, I wasn't a fan of the 844. Sometimes I wonder why we didn't just go back to the old system of, was it 7-4-2-3/5?
The A-levels kind of stuff.
Yeah, the A-level kind of arrangements. Incidentally, I was talking to a young person recently, and when I mentioned A-levels, he was asking, what's that? You know, then I realized that, of course, they never knew. They're too young to know about it. So despite the changes we've had in our education system, I think Kenyan skills are still primed. They excel world over. I remember at one time the former South African president, Thabo Mbeki, of his 10 major economic advisors, I think 3 or 4 were Kenyans. So I felt very proud to see some of them. One of them has since passed, Professor Shadrach Guto. But the mere fact that Kenyans are doing so well, and you get them all over, not just in South Africa. I remember this experience while at the airport in Doha about 8 or so years ago. I arrived there at the airport, and then I was working for the government of Rwanda. I see a number of black people at the counters. And as I go to present my ticket, my documents, one asks me, Abari Mweshimiwa. You know, I am taken a little back because although black, I didn't imagine he is Kenyan. Then he tells me, by the way, the rest of us you see here, sisi ni wa Kenya. You know, it was so incredible. Those days, I should say, Doha and Qatar weren't as open as it is today. I was saying if this was Dubai, we've always been close to Dubai, I wouldn't have been surprised. And if these counters were KQ, Kenya Airways counters, I would also not have been surprised. But this was Emirates, and Doha then was in the middle of nowhere. So there are many cases, I'm sure each of the colleagues on the table could give where Kenyan skills do well. But the ball in terms of foreign labor, again, I also remember about 14 or so years back when Madam Beatrice Kitui was PS of Labor. We evolved a strategy for foreign labor export, which we still have as Kenya Diaspora Alliance. How we would work with our members with footprints all over the world, identify good, decent jobs, identify the necessary skills, liaise with the Kenya government, with the recruitment agencies, competitively get people who are qualified for those jobs, give them pre-departure training and induction, and then when they go outside, they get received by our senior members. I remember, for example, then some Kenyans were cybersecurity leads for Saudi Telecom, for example, or New Zealand Telecom. You find Kenyans in very strategic positions. And they didn't mind receiving new Kenyans coming in, induct them into the system. And then, of course, maybe even for a little fee, ultimately they would send more money and, be secured and all. So I think as a strategy, as a government, I support the idea of if we can have this in a structured manner, where we have bilateral arrangements, even if it was only 2,000 jobs instead of the 20,000 being talked about in Germany, I think that's a good, for me, it's a welcome thing, because it's not that we have a shortage, but of course, if we are going to send our best brains outside, that would be something that concerns me.
Absolutely.
But I know, even though people now talk of brain gain, brain drain, I prefer to talk more of brain circulation, because often people go out, they pick on the skills and knowledge, and then bring it back. I think a difference, the BAL, and I remember while a graduate student in the US and UK 30 or so years back, what inspired us to go into organizing diaspora work, we watched very closely what the Indians were doing and Chinese. The difference we saw between the Indians and Chinese, and the fruits are there to see for it. Both had different approaches, but they were productive. Indians, if you pick the top 100 companies today, chances are in the US, chances are the CEOs, about 30 of them are either Indian or Indian born. For the Chinese, what they did, unlike the Indians, they went there, picked the skills, went back and perfected them even more. And that's why we have the big companies like Huawei. So I think we must be just intentional as Kenyans. What is it that we want to achieve? Get jobs, bring back the pounds, the dollars, the euros and all, but we could do much more if we are more intentional and strategic.
Right. Professor Rakif.
Yeah, that's an interesting debate. Let me start by reacting to my colleague. I see nothing wrong with 1844. Because if a system has been there for almost 40 years, you cannot condemn those children because they got into a system they never chose. And remember that US and Canada have 844, and they took America to the moon. So I think there's nothing wrong with 844. Actually, my advocacy is we will not even be changing the education system from A-level 844 to CBC. What matters is the content.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
So what's in the
It doesn't
basket?
matter the color of the cat as long as they can get the mice. I think number two, this export of labor is quite tantalizing because we don't export people. We export skills. So before we think about the foreign market, we should be asking what skills do our graduates have? Once they have global skills, marketable skills, the government does not even need to struggle. They will be looked for. People look for them. For example, as you mentioned, I noticed that the CEO of Microsoft, the CEO of Google, the CEO of IBM, actually Indians.
Right.
And the former dean of Harvard Business School was actually Indian.
Sure.
So
Even this guy of the World Bank.
that is it. So because you have marketable skills, you have no problem looking for the job. In fact, the government does not even need to intervene. You find the market. I remember around 2000 when the US Sarbanes-Oxley came into it was implemented, where you are separating accounting and consulting. And a lot of American companies decided to go to offshore, particularly in the Caribbean. And I can assure you a lot of Kenyan students went there. Some of them are still there, Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and so on, because they are the skills. So what we need to do is look at the skills that we are producing in our schools. And I'm surprised when I hear that the government is looking for data, skills inventory. I thought we have data for the students who graduate from TVETs, from universities, from primary schools every year. And that's what we should be using to project backward and find out what do we need, which skills are we missing. And we also must be futuristic so that we are not going to get people in the German market, Saudi market, US market immediately. It's something you have to think about 5 years. So that we go to the schools and tell them, these are the skills that are needed by the market. These are the changes we are supposed to make in our schools so that you do not only prepare yourself for the Kenyan market, but global market. And I think you are right. The Indian case, I like the Indian case because if you go anywhere in the world and you're looking for a computer scientist, chances are that they are Indian. We know them as very good in that area.
Sure.
So what are Kenyans good at? What are those skills we are taking to the market? And then I cannot fail to conclude that my colleague here, yourself, you have worked abroad.
Sure.
And you came home. And I'm sure by coming home, we changed our thinking. We changed our perspectives for better. So even if somebody does not go and make a lot of money, just going abroad and working there and coming back, you'll be a better Kenyan because a lot of things you take for granted, you don't take them for granted anymore. A good idea, but let's look at the whole ecology that is taking people to work abroad.
All right. Does that also really points towards the academia in preparation of video curricula of the job market abroad? Because it says, if you listen to the PS Mwadime and what he's actually expressing, the frustration of the fact that we're not really up to scratch with the labor markets, which is
if you come to my class, my first lecture, in all my classes, I always tell my students I'm preparing you for the global market, not the Kenyan market. So in that one whole semester, the examples, the illustrations were about the global market. I even take you to space. So that's what we are supposed to. Yes, that's what we are supposed to think about.
The virtual space.
Yes, not the space that Elon Musk and others are making money from. So that's why I'm saying that that's why I'm not bothered about 844, but the content.
I think what you should be addressing is right. And I remember when we were moving to 844 and Mackay report and Koech and all that stuff, and actually Koech when he was in Cambridge. And this lady, and I still remember, I don't know what she is, it used to be then not KICD. What was it before?
Kenya
Institute of Education. She said, it doesn't matter, it's actually what is in the basket.
Yes.
That basket is now what the learning skills you are providing. And by the way, most countries in the world are actually use 844, if you do a tally of that. But this issue, India model is very interesting, and they have an act. They're very clear. It's very clear in the act in terms of how they do the labor migration. And India is interesting. It looks from two levels. There are those high skilled, you find everywhere. Sure. And that one they have no problem. Those ones, the market. Because if your skill is quite somewhere, an American will come for you. It's a lot of opportunity. You remember this young man in this country, he could actually do things without saying. Israel grabbed him and the family. God knows what he's doing right now. So in terms of, sorry?
Talking of the computer whiz kid?
Yes.
Bed and Mbugwa?
Yes.
He's one of my mentees, but yeah, go ahead. He's at AMREF.
So,
or is that okay?
Yeah, in India they are very clear. When they come now to the cadre, perhaps we are talking about here, I don't think I would listen to this if I was actually have those professionals, and that's the kind of skills we require. Now that's where they come very strongly, and provide them the minimum and all that stuff. What you find we need to do, and I needed to be educated by Shamia. When somebody stands here and says there are opportunities in America, employment, you have to be very careful what you're talking about. America will take you because you have something you're bringing on the table, right? But the other point here was also careful in the sense that, sure, we go out there and declare that Google, we have got opportunities for people to work in Google. The same time, Google is saying we are laying off 1,000 people. So there are contradictions here. And to me, let the market, let us as government come back, create the law. We protect those who go to Saudi Arabia. We protect who go to whatever. In terms of the minimum pay, the treatment. And you go to Dubai, you're saying, there are a lot of Asians, people from India working there as porters, whatever, but they're protected from the minimum. I think that's what we should be headed to. For Iraqi and him, their skills will take them whatever they want.
Debal, maybe in terms of the computer whiz kid.
Right.
Yes, I can confirm that Bethwell Mbugua, a while back with a good Professor Emeritus friend, almost 20 or so years ago, we managed to get him to an institution where I did my postdoctoral fellowship, University of California, Berkeley, I think one of the Ivy League institutions. Professor Lenore Blum took him over there. He did graduate. I think he did bachelor's, went to India. He did a number of things, even masters. But it's good he came back. But again, talent management. How do we utilize talent? I think one area where we have been rather weak in is there are some of these outstanding kids, whiz kids, if you may, that we could be making better use of and develop them much further. But Debal, having said that, in terms of bilateral agreements of government getting jobs, I take a slightly different view. I think in this regard, I agree with government. You could be headhunted for the very specialized skills, but of course nobody is going to headhunt for the mid-level skills because they don't even know if they exist. So when it comes to bulk jobs, I think, for me, I see no harm. I remember when my late uncle, former ambassador to Qatar, during the World Cup, he did tell us Qatar government wanted 20,000 Kenyans to be in Qatar during that activity. I think we ended up having between 10 to 15,000 Kenyans working in Qatar at that point. I see no problem when UK says we need 20,000 nurses. I do know we have a shortage of nurses and doctors here, and this is one of the conversations we're having with the president and leadership of Kenya Medical Association and other professional bodies. In fact, it reminds me, even though Professor was saying there's no problem with the curricula, maybe the content, one of our members, again, one of our leading diaspora scholars, summarized it. He says it's not even content, that the main thing we want, whether it's 844 or the old A-level system or the CBC, is character and value systems. For him, as long as we engrave ethics in that, for him that was the single silver bullet to deal with our problems of education. Maybe again the scholars can research a little more into that, because maybe we are not putting sufficient attention to value systems. But finally, and here I agree with Professor Iraqi.
For once.
No. Actually, I agree with him on many things, by the way, even when I don't mention. I only mention where we don't agree. But yeah, the future of work is the key thing. So it's important. I appreciate that there are professors who are training for the global market. Of course, one may say, to what extent should be our education system as tuned to the labor market? Are we just training, particularly at university, higher education level, for the labor market or more? Obviously, I'm assuming, and I'm glad many institutions have incorporated entrepreneurship into their curricula. Because at the end of the day, those who end up being employed should or is just a small fraction. The majority end up running their own businesses. So there are certain, in my view, certain courses that should be mandatory, and they need to change with the time. For me, the key word, and I think I cannot repeat it sufficiently, innovate, be creative. Don't do the same old over and over again.
Indeed, right.
This debate is becoming quite exciting, because if I were asked, the most important ingredient in an education system is not even character or values. To me, it is inspiration. If you inspire the students, they'll do the rest. And I think that's what every professor, every teacher should be doing: inspire the next generation.
So we don't go the value ways.
You can inspire the fellow.
Where do we predicate this inspiration?
You can actually inspire the fellow to be a thief.
Now, these are Kenyans talking now. But two other small things. I think when you talk about the labor market, we also must be cognizant that, and we cannot deny that, some countries are looking for cheap labor. So that's why protection is very important. That when you go there, we pay the minimum wages, so that you're not paid cheaper because you're an immigrant. Now, an issue that he raised that was very important, the problem of gifted. I think we have a lot of gifted people in this country. Those students, 1% who get A's and A minus. We don't inspire them most. We don't keep them busy. And I remember, I'm not boasting, I'm just informing you. When I was in the US, one of the things I did in the university was actually to teach high school kids, the gifted ones. They came for the advanced program. So a kid at State House Girls, who is very good, can come to UN and take some courses. So I think that's one area we have not taken advantage of. And those kids are innovative, they are creative, but we don't take advantage of them. In fact, we see as if they are troublesome. And then finally, before I forget, the fact that we are looking for jobs outside might be an indicator that our economy is not growing fast enough. So the same way I can go to Israel, the same way I can go to Germany, is the same way I should go to Ajia and start a business, the same way I should go to Homa Bay and start a business. So let's also remember that we should also need to make sure the economy is growing. We need to make the economy conducive for growth. The same way we move from one country to another is the same way we should move from one country to another. Charity starts at home. And Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley is not Ivy. I correct you.
It's not an Ivy League.
No, UCB is an Ivy League.
It is not.
Well, that's a better issue we can discuss.
But I think it's something
for the scholars.
There's something I want to share. Kiprono one time shared, and I missed him, the fella. I haven't seen him for some time. Kitono.
He was here last week.
Yes, and he was talking, when he was actually doing his undergrad, he said, when I'm not going to be employed, I'm going to create opportunities. And I think it's also something we need to bring to the fore, that you're setting the opportunity. In fact, it's something here saying Kenya beat the odds. They are creating more new businesses. And that's what perhaps you're looking at.
The registration of 4,000 business, they're very optimistic.
Absolutely. And by the way, I don't believe in teaching entrepreneurship. It should be in ourselves. It's a part of your DNA, whatever area you are in. And the idea, XN, and I really agree with you, and I also continue not to agree with you.
I'm used to that.
I think the
and
point
in the same institution.
Yes,
that's allowed.
That's very healthy.
Which is good.
Academic freedom.
I do a lot of I do a lot of PowerPoint presentations in terms of students, and I've always the bottom left I have the word integrity. And one student he was asked by the dad. No, a kid asked the dad, "Why does your lecturer, Muhathiri, why does your Muhathiri have this word integrity there?" And the message I provide is, you can learn all this good stuff. You can be innovative, you can be creative. But why is integrity? If you go to the Madeira School of Leadership, political leadership, those are the emphasis you want. You must create value. You must create, and I've said this before, we must move our country from a country to a nation. You remember Magufuli when he was on the Southern Bypass? How many tribes do you have in Tanzania? 140. Southern Bypass. He opened it. He came. Magufuli.
Oh, okay, I can't remember if I did.
141 tribes in Tanzania. We are 42. You go there, those who have been to TZ, you won't know. It's one tribe. And that's what Mwalimu did. Mwalimu Nyerere stepped back and took the journey of creating, moving from a country to a nation. And what is built on that? Values. What is a value you can take to the bank? Integrity.
Can I react to that?
We want to just wind up on this, and then we go to the issue of power as well.
I'll be very brief. I think I agree with my colleague here that integrity is very important. But I think the most important place to teach integrity is not in school, it is at home. And that one I cannot retract. Teach integrity at home. That's the best forum to do that. Number two.
How do you teach integrity at home?
I thought you about children.
But how do you teach? You know, we just need, is it a curricula or what?
No,
is it you, the person that they emulate? What is the mode of teaching?
That is called the hidden curriculum. The way you behave yourself. The examples you give.
You know, somebody asked one time.
You know, you need to be very intentional. Even when you're talking about how to teach these children. Because we assume the fact that they are home and they're watching us, they're learning.
Let me give you an example. And I'm quoting the former director of Starehe Boys Center. He said, I can leave my house at 5 a.m. in the morning to go to work and come at night. So we put a lot of emphasis on our professions. Why can't we put the same emphasis on bringing up children to make sure that they have integrity, they have values and so on? So that's the best place to do that.
But excellent. If you look at this country, sorry, dragging on this issue, integrity across the board. One of the biggest challenge we have even in the political arena, and you can take area, is lack of integrity.
That's true. I fully
check where those people grew up.
Something very interesting question. The same Justice asked. In a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself integrity.
Right.
The moment you start teaching it, and perhaps it was a misuse of the word, I would imagine, you're now putting in a scale. And he said, is it a 0 or 10?
No in between.
You cannot say my level of integrity is 7. Is it that you have it or you don't?
I wanted to finish, then I give my colleagues.
All right, you finish up then.
About integrity. The other one is, you are always talking about being enterprising. And I've argued, I will keep on arguing that the mistake we make in this country is to assume that school dropouts will be entrepreneurs of the future. A students, A- students should be entrepreneurs. That's what other countries do. That's why Google, Microsoft, and others have done very well, because they took the best brains. We should do the same in this country.
We have this saying that when you have people in the room and they all agree on things, then it means only one person is thinking. So the academic freedom is such that people disagree on views, and particularly when it comes to
degrees of freedom.
That's what they're paid to disagree. It reminds me of, I remember, while playing football as a member of parliament and we lost. Mukisa Kitu is saying, even though we lost the Ugandans, there's something we do better than football. Talking, we are as politicians. So academia is understandable. And allow me, yes, to admit, I was just quickly scanning through ChatGPT, the Ivy Leagues. In the engineering world, even MIT is not here.
That's true.
What I'm used to is maybe 25 or so years ago, when I was involved in those institutions. At Stanford, when the internet came into this country, it was because of the journeys we walked through Stanford to get it here. But I must also mention the BAL. I noticed Harvard, having been involved in mentoring students through the Mandela program, Washington program at Harvard and so on. But we knew for engineering the main top schools are Stanford. Stanford is
I think your point is
not here. My point is there are institutions that have set a record. So for law, yes, there are the leading schools. But I must also say for Kenya, we need to specialize. What's the University of Nairobi known for? I think having some lead so that, I remember in the older days, for the older generation, when Dar es Salaam was known for law, Uganda, I think Kampala was for medicine, Nairobi for engineering. I think that kind of specialization is something that's sorely needed.
All right. All right,
so
talking about
was it Stanford?
Stanford is not, MIT is not, but for us in engineering, UCB is not listed. Those are the top for engineering. So maybe these are Ivy Leagues for other things.
Georgia Tech.
Okay, let's address the issue. But before we go there, this Business Daily was holding, you're talking about integrity. This is very key because public officers are looting 605 million shillings in corrupt deals. This is according to the Public Service Commission report.
Treasury, 687 ghost workers.
Just a moment. A commission says another 222.7 million shillings stolen was recovered. Most theft reported in state farms and agencies. Public servants made away with 605.1 million shillings in financial year ended June 2023, giving a sneak peek into the billions of shillings siphoned from the exchequer without any prosecution. Any prosecution. Here we are taxed. Here is where the money is going. 605 million shillings. We are talking about right now when you're going to the Form 1 or the 100% transition. Most of the students have not reported because of lack of school fees. We're talking about also the counties that monies have not been disbursed. Look at this eye-popping figure that we're talking about. This is almost nearly 1 trillion shilling.
Have we ever watched when
we'll be close even to financing, you know, our budget.
Have you ever watched when wasn't an accident, and God forbid none get an accident? The people coming, they first come to your pocket.
You bet.
Yeah, they're actually checking what you have. They're not even bothered whether you're okay. And that's the kind of and one thing you should have followed that.
Right.
This was recovered. Maybe the next level it was recovered, it was also stolen at that level.
Yeah, the one that was recovered, a bit of it was there.
The BAL in
so
this regard,
was there any full disclosure?
Yeah, I fully agree with Professor Gituro in this regard. Value systems, integrity, for me, number one any day. And in fact, while he's talking of people who, when one has an accident, and they go for the pockets first, it even gets worse when we know there are business owners who, when there's an accident, what they ask is, what's the state of the car? You know, even before they ask what's the state of the driver? You know, the people. The Ubuntu, what's the humanity? I think maybe that requires its own discussion, and I must admit I'm not the expert.
The Krasko one was some there. Right. Some there used to play some Kikuyu songs, you know, how they repeat the old ones. And there was this vehicle moving from Nairobi to Nyeri. Then at Chania River, the matatu overturns. And then he's asking, hey, when we had an pesa, and people are dying. The conductor is asking. I know, if you put it in Kikuyu, it comes so nicely. Eh?
No, I think the aspect of value system, the BAL,
is very key.
Is very key. We need to emphasize it. I think part of it could be institutional. But I think even having it in our curriculum and practicing it, and it starts from this top. You know, they say a fish rots are coming from the lake. Allow me to use the fish, it rots from the top. The aspect of value system, and I keep saying, Professor was challenging me the other day, maybe I should write experiences of Rwanda. You know, it's so easy for the Rwandese to follow what President PK, as some of us call him, do, President Kagame. You know, vision, full of vision and selflessness, and I mean, integrity to a large extent and value systems. I think for me, this is second to none.
All right.
That's what Ukbo is saying. I would ban walking barefoot, as the Rwandans did some years back. I wouldn't go this for comfort.
Right.
I would do it strictly for business.
Amen.
Right. Let's see. You wanted to say something? Yes, I wanted just to move on with Kenya Power.
I wanted to say one or two things about this public. You know, I get concerned when I see a headline like the public officers. So those are the people you have given the mandate to take care of public resources.
Indeed.
Public assets. But they're the routers. So if the police is routing, who do you report him to? And this is a question we should be asking. Why do people we entrust in taking care of our resources? Why do they route? I think one reason is, again, he said there's no integrity, but why don't people have integrity? I see the way they are brought up, the examples we see, because we don't go to serve the public because we want to serve the public, it's because we want to take care of our interest. The value system, again, maybe the law has been very lenient of those who get this. And I think we are also hypocrites. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in this country, because these people, if you meet them on the streets, they will not tell you they are routing public offers. In fact, you may find them in church the next day. You may find them coming for a function, and they are the readers, and they are so on. And maybe there's a bit of immaturity in this country. Because I've always thought that once you grow old, you become 50, 20, 40, and so on, you mature from such a habit of stealing. I did not think that adults could steal until I realized they also steal. So to me, this steering is a way of showing national immaturity.
National immaturity.
Yes, that's how I interpret it. And finally, why are we having all these headlines when we have so many churches in this country? Are they ineffective?
It's a good question.
One is
our churches ineffective in terms of instilling values as well? It's just a component of a society.
Right.
But before we even come to the church, let's ask ourselves, what about the institutions? Because we have the former chair of the Kenya School of Government.
Yes.
Where we expect all these public servants, they go through the training, and I can see even through the curricula, there's the issues to do with corporate governance, the issues to do with integrity, leadership and integrity.
Absolutely.
If you go through, so are we wasting our money? Are we wasting our resources? Taking these public servants to Kenya School of Government, of which you've been the former chair. You can tell us, why would we be reporting 605 looting, especially in that particular period, if they go and they're taught about integrity, if they're taught about Mwongozo Code, if they're taught about the public ethics, officers' ethics, as far as is enshrined in our constitution.
You are right, Diban, spot on. And this is a point perhaps you are trying to make in a big picture team. It's a question of what you do. It's not a question you are being taught. They go through that. Mwongozo, and we have talked with you. What you do, what you not do. And I think what you talk about integrity is you are doable. What you do. And we have said before, integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching you. I could teach all that. And I tell my students, you could be a brilliant sergeant with a name. But what value are you bringing to the society? How do you see? And I hear you. And I started with this discussion. Very strong in Kenya School of Government. I was there. You see the skills that are being provided. But there are times, and one thing I found there was interesting, they actually questioned the person talking about values there. Yeah. They question. You're telling about the values. You're in this cadre. So they have this memory.
So the person who's teaching about values is also scandalous.
Absolutely.
And it's coming to teach. I think that's where we have all this system all mixed up. How then do you expect somebody who has no...
Can I give you a good example if you're around me?
My turn, huh?
Yes.
One thing, trademark I take out of you is what you call the true north.
The true north.
That true north aspect is so important. I fully agree. Part of the problem we have, particularly with our political leadership, is what Professor is calling hypocrisy. And this reminds me of a joke we used to have of a madman. You know, in our earlier days, people would go to a rivulet. You know,
every market has a mad person.
A bath there. As you remove your clothes, you are taking a bath. A madman comes, takes off with your clothes,
and you become the madman.
Yeah, you know,
and we wonder who is the madman.
People start thinking, who is the madman? Now, in Kenya, what I long established is not everybody called a thief is a thief.
I like that analogy.
And not everybody claiming to be clean like Pamba is clean like Pamba. Because there's also a lot of witch hunting. So the point for me is that true north. If only people could be true to that true north, I think would make it. And it all boils down to value systems.
But who determined that true north?
I think the true north, fortunately, the true north is only one. You know, in science and maths is exact. You know, it cannot be one or two. It's either one or two.
Right.
Yeah, but we have to find a way, and this is why I agree with regard to the judiciary. With its own weaknesses, it's currently the only institution that we have that either has or is meant to be, it's the moral of society that we have. So that's why, despite its weaknesses, we have to respect them. And of course, the judiciary is a long chain up to the Supreme
Court. The other thing which had to come out very strongly, I think, in terms of my experience there, and I had my own ups and downs there. It's interesting when you go to those public institutions, is the whole leadership. The whole leadership becomes very strong. And even, I'm talking about leadership, you set the queue, you set the bar at that level. And I give this example. We appreciate and respect leadership, particularly in the African culture. Magufuli, and we have said that, Magufuli convinced Tanzania there was no COVID.
Right.
Which was not true. Everybody would be finding what's happening in Tanzania. And they agreed to him. because you had a position, a responsibility of leadership. So when you're given that leadership, I think it's important for us to recognize how many people value what, when I open that mouth, what I say, what it means. If today we say, yes, there's 6 or 5 people, no manenos, let them be talking when they're in committee. But Shem and his lawyer who wake up, no, you can't. But there's certain thing you actually as leadership for the good for the society. You have to take in very draconian, if you wish, the link when you approach.
Right. And I think very quickly, that's why I'm saying the way you bring up kids is very important. Because at my age or at professors or his age, why are you teaching me integrity at my age? You cannot teach an old dog new tricks. So let's teach this integrity, these values are in life. And that's why I'm talking about the family, that's why I'm talking about home.
So
I'll give you a good example.
You should not be going for seminars on leadership on integrity.
Remind us. Maybe
what are we reminding you of? There was no template before.
Where you learned when you are growing up. But let me give you an example. There's a time, and Shem can remember, there's a subject that was being taught in high school called social education and ethics. You remember? I don't know whether you can remember.
Yes.
Then it was removed.
Maybe the younger generation.
And can you remember there was a leakage in KCSE exam on social education and ethics and international school. That's what I'm saying. Don't teach things. Let them be part of your life as they do in other countries.
That's it.
As they do in other countries.
That's it. They're part of your life.
Thank you.
The Bible says 2 things. One, tell them even when they know.
Yes.
The other one says, do as they do. Sorry, as they say, not as they do. If only what people said was actually what's done.
I can see this.
But that's where the value
going to
system.
church on Saturday is helping.
Value system.
All right.
It doesn't help
Kenya
on
Power.
Sundays.
We want to talk about power right now. Kenya Power is seeking a way out of the challenges that the weak shilling has dealt it, including plunging into loss-making last year. The electricity distributor, which is among the largest consumers of foreign currency in the country, is looking for a consultant to develop a solution that will help reduce the impact of the weakening shilling. Impact on Kenya Power has it been seen, and it's plunging into losses over the last financial year. The company posted a 3.19 billion shillings after tax loss for the year to June 2022. This, it said, was due to high financial cost arising due to the fluctuations in the exchange rate between the dollar and the shilling. In developing the solution, the selected firm will undertake an in-depth review of the current system on foreign exchange management, conduct an exhaustive analysis of existing foreign exchange exposure and possible risk mitigation approaches, and the review of purchase agreements, loan agreements, and other transactions. The company will also assess the effectiveness of the forex recovery mechanism it has in place, as well as determine the most viable option for mitigating foreign exchange risk from the alternative. What about this? What do you think about this? Okay, maybe you are the people who can actually now apply for this consultancy.
Let's not waste money.
Yeah,
Let's not waste money.
Yeah, rubbish.
This is rubbish.
Nah,
Why is it rubbish?
Probably they should.
I knew you'll have that reaction.
Oh,
Professor.
yeah. Who doesn't know why the dollar is going down? What you bring shame to? Tell us. It's a waste of resources. That resources could prudently use to produce more. With all due respect, I hope this is not true.
But it's true. Why is it not true? But
perhaps even when you want to actually look at this, would this actually be housed at Kenya Power?
You're going to go to the website and you can see there.
Who would actually be doing it? It's probably Central Bank or Treasury. It's not just Kenya Power. And as when I'm on it, it's so sad. It's only my wife and I, 2 of us. And you know how much bill we get? We are getting about 18,000 a month. Talk about robbery. Daytime, not usiku. Daytime.
Well,
but I'm on Sunday.
Yeah, and we're just looking at today's Business Daily. The middle class power bills jumped 70% in a year. Cost of 200 units of power has shot up by 3,073. Increase follows end of subsidies and shilling free fall, right? That is a question that we need to ask.
I know extent for us.
For Kenya Power being also a monopoly,
he follows.
They should be having a buffer.
I like him idea of following. He has done some research studies. We can commit ourselves, extend. Follow this study. You may not do it yourself and get what they'll come up with. I can write now what they'll come up with today.
Maybe I can jump into this because this is a very scary headline.
For
Scaring for consumers, for industrialists, for everybody. In fact, nowadays when I feed power into my system, I'm always surprised how soon it's just ticking and starts making that noise. You have to top up. But I think the question we should be asking, and we have asked in this forum very many times, is why is power so expensive in Kenya? It's the only place where you overproduce power, but the power keeps going. The cost of power keeps going up against all the rules of supply and demand. So when Kenya Power says they are doing consultancy to find out how to deal with forex, I think what they should be they should be doing a research to find out how their customers are suffering. I think that should be the study I would want to be given to do, because people are really suffering because of this. One, and we have argued here, is there's no way you are going to be efficient if you have monopoly. No way. It doesn't matter whether you are talking about the police, in a company. If you are monopoly, you never work well. So if instead of Kenya Power giving us that consultancy, they should give us a consultancy on how to stop their monopoly. That one I will comfortably take it. And I don't know why Kenya Power is expensive in this country. One, the supply is higher, and two, I've always demanded we should have an auction. So Kenya Power should buy power from the cheapest sources.
We auction the power.
Yes. So who is going to sell you power cheapest? And I'll give you an example I found on Moi Avenue some times ago. I don't know whether it is still there. One morning I was walking on Moi Avenue around 7 a.m. and an Asian businessman came and stopped his pickup. And I saw some guys carrying boxes. They used to be painters. And believe it or not, he was looking for the cheapest guy to go and paint. So why can't Kenya do the same? Why can Kenya Power do the same? If I am a renewable power producer and I'm producing at $1 per kilowatt, why don't you buy from me instead of somebody selling at $5 kilowatt or $5 per kilowatt? So I think the debate about helping Kenya Power with the so-called exchange rate, I think to me is not the right debate.
Rent seeking.
The BAL, I think I also joined my colleagues. I don't think hiring
a consultant
is the way to go. Maybe they should talk to some diasporians, perhaps would pro bono give advice. Of course, only covering certain basic fees. They wouldn't charge what may be market rate. So it doesn't have to be a paid for consultancy. But having said that, the BAL, for me the issue boils down to, are there things that really can be done at maybe a higher level to stabilize and grow our economy? And in my view, again, a conversation that I've had with one of, I think he was the founding CEO first of Kenya Re, then also was engaged also by President Kibaki to start the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and so on and so forth. I think was also involved in getting PTA Bank to Kenya. He's got a track history. I think he's one of our topmost specialists in the insurance field. And when he was sharing this story with us, the BAL, and I wondered why can't our National Treasury and CBK utilize brains like that? Because they've worked together before. His premise was, behind Kenya Re when it was formed, was that the underwriters would put in, I think, between 5 to 10% of their assets in that the reinsurance, to reinsure. So people will underwrite, but then there is reinsurance. I was learning a new term, retrocession. I think my colleagues can Google it. That is, you reinsure reinsurers. And I was saddened to learn that currently we don't have that level reinsurers. It's big money that the reinsurers pay. And most of the companies paid are offshore. They are in, I don't want to say in the West. And his premise was, that's what I gather informed the creation of the Nairobi International Finance Center, that instead of doing retrocession abroad, all this money would be put here. You can imagine the BAL if all our big banks, being in financial institutions and big insurance companies, were to put 10% of their resources into a basket that's maintained by government to cushion them, to insure them. I'm not an expert in that area. You can imagine, maybe we wouldn't need to borrow. And this gentleman was telling us at the time when the Nairobi Financial Center was being established, again, the President Kibaki's regime sent them to places like Qatar, Singapore, Malaysia, and so on, just to study. Those jurisdictions don't take loans, international loans. So these big loans we are taking, I think we are being lazy in thinking. Let's be more creative.
Yeah, that's the word. Lazy in thinking.
Let me ask a question.
Just continue.
I have a Kenya Power Water Bill here, Kenya Power Bill here, and it's a very interesting one. First of all, I noticed that 10% of the cost of this power is inflation, is actually forex exchange adjustment. And Kenya Power is protected from fuel. There is even fuel energy. They are even protected from inflation. So how do they make losses if they are protected, these ways? So I think there's more than meets there in terms of Kenya Power. We need, I think, to open up this sector so we know exactly what is happening. And the most important, we bring in some competition. I believe the only way to make Kenya, to get us the true cost of power in this country is to bring in competition. The same way we have competition in matatus, and we get a very, very good price for our transport from point A to B.
But I think there's a point, Shem, you brought, and there's something we have approached in this country of lazy thinking.
Right.
Sure. And it's so sad because it's taking center stage. Yeah, what you have in town, techpreneurs.
Right.
And very interesting. I find this scenario interesting because some of these fellas, they say, I never went to school.
Right.
I don't have the papers you have, but I'm doing all this business.